Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the council. Before we start the usual proceedings, I'm sure you will have heard and been saddened to learn of the death of former Councillor Sue Prynne. Our thoughts are also with Councillor David Shaw and his family at this time. We will now observe a minute's silence. Would the leader like to say a few words in regard of Councillor Sue?
Thanks, Mayor. And before I do, on behalf of the council, David, you're in our love and prayers and thoughts, and we send you our commiserations in what must be a continually difficult time. Former Councillor Sue Prynne was a stalwart of the Labour group, and many people in here will remember Sue. She's a former borough councillor, Penwortham. She was a former Penwortham town councillor for a number of years as well, and she was also the former Penwortham mayor. And her loss, leaving her son Adam, was very, very untimely. And we all knew and liked Sue, and she was a stalwart for the Labour Party and the values of the Labour Party. And she's left us mayor far too young. We send our fondest regards and love to Adam, her son. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to say anything in regard of Councillor Sue Prynne? Councillor David Howarth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I served on all three councils with Sue Prynne. We were both elected to the county council on the same day back in 2013 when we represented Penwortham North and Penwortham South as they were then. And I was also her deputy mayor when she was mayor of Penwortham. So did know her very well. We did work together. And it is just a very sad loss at what I think we can all agree is quite a young age. So our condolences do go out to Sue's family, and it is a sad loss.
Councillor Keith Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Similar to Councillor Howarth, myself and Sue were elected at the same time to Borough Council. And some of you might remember we got thrown straight in the deep end with the maltings, places for people and a ball cage of all sorts of things, which just sort of reared its head again. Sue, we soon found out, was very fastidious. She worked hard for her residents and she made sure that they got their voice heard. And she did that. We soon learned that that's her MO, and she did that all the time. So she stood up for her residents. She will be sadly missed. And I had the pleasure to be able to help the family during this time with dealing with councils and things like that. It's an arduous job. It's not one I would wish anyone else to have to do, but it was my privilege to be able to represent her in her last moments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matthew Tomlinson.
Thank you. I just, of course, as been alluded to only briefly, Sue was a county councillor and I served with her at Lancashire. So if you'll forgive me, I'll just talk for a few moments about the work that she did there. She was really proud to be elected to the county council, and she took her duties there very, very seriously indeed. She was particularly proud when Jenny Mean, the leader, appointed her to be chair of the corporate parenting board that looks after the issues surrounding children in care. And at the time, I was, of course, cabinet member for children, young people in schools, so we worked really closely. She was a fantastic champion for children in care. She actually instigated children in care being invited to every corporate parenting board so that their voice would be heard, and was a great champion for young people. I think, as has been said before, taken from us much too young, but made a real contribution, not just to the lives of people in Penwitham and South Ribble, but across Lancashire too. And I too send my condolences to Adam.
Thank you. Councillor Karen Walton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And we too, as the Conservative group, send our condolences to David and your family at this very sad time for you. Unfortunately, I really didn't know Sue, and I asked members of our group that if they knew Sue, and unfortunately, not many of our group had the privilege, as you said, of working with Sue. But anyone who has served the community should be remembered in our thoughts today. And so we send our condolences to all her family and friends at this very sad time for them all.
Thank you. Councillor David Shaw has asked to say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor. I also knew Sue Prynne, and I had nothing but respect for the lady, and I know how difficult it is for the family that she's left behind. My main reason for standing, though, is to thank members of all parties here and the officers for their very kind thoughts, in some cases, excellent advice over the last few weeks. I'm extremely grateful to you all.
Thank you, David. All right, I'll start with some domestic arrangements for the meeting. Due to the regulations surrounding voting, only those members physically present are able to vote. Mobile devices, please ensure that all electronic equipment is either on silent mode or switched off. There are no planned fire alarms, so if it does sound, please leave by the emergency exits. The meeting is being live streamed during open session for members of the public to watch. If you would like to speak, press your microphone to let me know. When I invite you to speak, your microphone will turn red. When you are using the voting system, press the button once and wait for the light to confirm your preference. Please do not obstruct your mouth to ensure anyone lip reading can do so. If anyone is having issues, please let the Democratic Services know. Some points of procedures for members. Members asking a question have a maximum of 3 minutes and may ask one supplementary question directly related to the original question, and for not more than 2 minutes. A member who has spoken once on a motion may not speak again while it is being debated, except in specific circumstances. Also, individual members of the public will be restricted to speaking for a total of 5 minutes during the whole of the meeting. Right. Are there any apologies for absence? Thank you. Declarations of interest. Members are reminded of their responsibility to clear any pecuniary interests in respect of matters contained in the agenda. Are there any declarations of interest? Good. Minutes of the last meeting, pages 5 to 24. This is an item for decision. Can I ask the leader of the council, Councillor Foster, to propose the minutes of the council meetings held on the 17th and 24th of May 2023 to be approved? Okay, is that seconded? Are there any questions on points of accuracy? No. So can we vote for or against, please, using the buttons? Let's see if they work. Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. We now move on to the boring bits, the Mayor's announcements. I would like to start by thanking everyone who attended my installation dinner at Parrington Lodge. My guest speakers were representatives from each of my chosen charities: St Catherine's Hospice, Tender Nursing Care, Tippy Tails Baby Bank. It was a lovely evening throughout, enjoyed by all, it says here, who attended. I'm holding my first fundraising event, which is a quiz night on the 22nd of September here in the Civic Centre. If you wish to attend, please contact my secretary, Louise Bamber, as soon as possible. I'd love to see as many of you there as possible. It goes on and I get a list of everything I've been to, but some of the highlights were Music in the Park, which was fantastic. We were at the front of the procession for the Leyland Festival and Lost at Carnival, which were brilliant. Today, we raised the Windrush flag, which I was proud to do. It's unfortunately we couldn't do it on the day. However, that ties in very closely with how welcoming this county and South Ribble is, because we also have the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Bamber Bridge. I'm not going to carry on with the list, but I would just like to thank the Deputy Mayor for standing in for me on a number of engagements over the past couple of months. Thank you. We move on to item 5, Cabinet, pages 25 to 28. This item is for noting. Can I please ask the Leader of the Council, Councillor Foster, to present the report of the meeting of Cabinet held on the 21st of June and 5th of July.
Thanks, Mayor, and I intend to be brief. The meeting of the 21st of June, the Cabinet adopted the South Ribble Tourism Strategy, and where we're looking to create by 2028 a vibrant tourism industry within the borough. The Q4 performance monitoring report was presented, Mayor, so that was the last report of the previous administration, and basically the councils continue to perform particularly well. Councillor Tomlinson then presented the capital and balance sheet outturn report and the revenue budget outturn report for the end of the last administration as well, and I'm pleased to report that everything is looking very strong financially. And I'll note again, the authority's debt position is nil and the long-term borrowing is nil, and it had been all through the administration. Also, there was a slight underspend on the year as well, and so I'm pleased to report to council that our reserve position has improved as well, one of the best reserves in Lancashire, Mayor. We then discussed and pushed forward to council, for the enhancement of the community hub and the restructures, which we're going to debate later. Then on the meeting of the 5th of July, Mayor, we debated and adopted the key contracts and partnerships report. The biodiversity action plan was discussed and presented and will be discussed shortly. The content management system was brought forward and approved. And then the Cabinet, as we said we would, debated the scrutiny review of Better Homes and Neighbourhoods and adopted the majority of the recommendations from the committee. And where we couldn't adopt the recommendations in full, Councillor Flannery has written to the committee explaining why. And finally, we awarded the contract for the property and assets management system. and me and my cabinet are available for any questions any members may have. Thank you, Mayor.
Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Are there any questions from members of the council? Are there any questions from members of the public? Council, now, Derek Morris, please make you aware. I'm sure you know how to use the microphone system.
I notice in your consideration of the scrutiny report on housing that you were not prepared to consider the recommendation of the scrutiny committee that SIL monies should be given 15% to area chair. The report, of course, rightly says that 15% and 25% of SIL monies are by statute given to chairman of parish councils, and Penwitham, of course, gets the 25%. It was just curious to know why, in saying that you want to retain flexibility, why you wanted to keep flexibility for yourself and for South Ribble, for the centre, but weren't prepared to extend that flexibility to chairs of area hubs.
Thanks, I'm going to call you Councillor Forrest. Thanks for the question, Derek. The local plan, as you know, is evolving as we speak and is due to be delivered in the next 6 to 12 months. And the issue of SIL will be looked at through the local plan, Derek, as well. But please also remember that any projects that any of the community hubs wish to undertake, they can speak to the council, they can speak to the cabinet, and by having greater flexibility around those SIL receipts, actually we could potentially approve more schemes for the hubs working together with them. The other added challenge we have, Derek, is currently on City Deal sites. Any SIL receipts that we do receive on the City Deal sites actually automatically all go to the county council already. So we wouldn't actually be in a position where we could allocate 15% of them to the community hubs. However, that's now, and I'm not saying when things change and we move forward that Councillor Flannery won't look at this, and we may look to introduce new schemes, Derek.
If there are no more questions, please can we note the report? Thank you. Okay, Governance Committee, pages 29 to 32. This item is for noting. Please can I ask the Chair of the Governance Committee, Councillor Sharples, to present his report to the meeting of the Governance Committee held on the 23rd of May.
Thank you, Mayor. It was a pleasure to chair the first Governance Committee meeting of this administration on May the 23rd. And what an exciting agenda it was too. There's eight items on it. You can find those as stated at pages 29 to 32. I'd also like to say that it was a pleasure to welcome newly elected members for that exciting meeting. None of whom to date, Mayor, as far as I know, have actually had to seek any psychiatric help, which is very encouraging. It was great also to welcome former older members as well, returning members, I should say. I'd like to thank all members for their comments and contributions, and the officers for the excellent reports and their contribution due diligence. And with that, I present the report to Council for noting. Thank you.
Is this seconded? Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the council? Nope. Okay. Are there any questions from members of the public? Right. Please can we note the report? Thank you. Scrutiny Committee, which you'll find at pages 33 to 34. This item is for noting. Please can I ask the Chair of Corporate Performance and Budget Scrutiny Committee, Councillor Adams, to present the report held on the 12th of June.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say, obviously, the information is in the pack from our previous meeting. I'd just like to thank again all members, or returning members and new members for taking part, and I look forward to working with them in the future. Thank you.
Is this seconded?
Second that report. It's nice to see that committee fully established and up and running now. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the council? Are there any questions from members of the public? Derek, I will remind you that you do only have 5 minutes throughout the entirety of the meeting.
I'm fully aware of that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. My question really is addressed to Councillor Turner as the chair of the External Scrutiny Committee. And as
this isn't a report on that, Derek. I'm going to have to shut you down.
Beg your pardon, sir?
This is on the corporate performance and budget scrutiny.
Is there a separate allocation to Councillor Turner? I'm not sure. I didn't know whether to include it at this.
Not at this particular meeting, no.
Could I ask of the Chair General the same question, perhaps?
If it's a report, then yes. If it's connected to the.
If it's about the specific report that Councillor Adams is talking about, then yes. If it's not, then the answer is no.
Well, I shall stand down then in that case,
okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Another minute.
Pardon?
It's used another minute.
Right. Okay. In that, please, can we note the report? Okay. Climate emergency, air quality and biodiversity action plan. Upgrades and annual greenhouse gas report, pages 35 to 75. This is for decision. Please can I ask the Cabinet Member of Neighbourhoods and Waste Services, Councillor Ashton, to present the report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. As the Mayor has said, the recommendations they're set out in the report. Basically, we're asked to note the progress over these interrelated policy areas. To note in particular the position on the council's carbon footprint, and then finally to write to the government expressing the council's concern at the proposals to drop the 1.6 billion climate and nature pledge. So it's an extensive report, and I'm conscious we've got a large agenda, so I will not go into particular detail. Just a few things I wanted to draw council's attention to. So if you look through the actual report on the council agenda, you'll see in terms of climate emergency, the various areas that we've been able to tackle in terms of our own buildings, support to businesses, support to low income and vulnerable families, and also in terms of beginning to work on retrofitting homes within the borough. And one thing I would like to draw attention to is the fact that all these things have been able to attract external funding. So for what has been a relatively small investment from the council in setting up the internal teams that have been working on this, but actually bringing a lot of money into South Ribble and its businesses and people. Just next, the report covers air quality. And again, we've got progress to report. So at the moment, there have been 5 air quality management areas in the borough that we've been monitoring. One of those, Penwitham, the levels have dropped considerably since we started the programme. And so we are now in the process of seeking approval to rescind that air quality management area, and we will continue to monitor the other areas. We have been investing heavily, again, largely through external funding in electric vehicle charging points across the borough. We are investing again in upgrading the council's fleet of vehicles with electric vehicles, but obviously that's not the sort of thing that you can do in one go. And similarly, in terms of the tools that the neighbourhoods team and other teams use as they're reaching the end of their life cycle, replacing them with battery-powered tools. The next item that's covered in the report is biodiversity, and as there is a lengthy report next on the agenda, which has also been to Cabinet, I'll leave that for now. The detail on all of these areas is in Appendix A to the report, and I think it's an impressive list in terms of the progress that's been made. Greenhouse gas, just I have to say that bit is quite new to me, and I did find it quite complex because it is done to quite a complex formula. You will note that the council's greenhouse gas emissions went up for a year, which was at the point when we brought in the leisure centres and the refuse collection vehicles. It's now coming back down again, particularly with the investment that's been made in the leisure centres, again, which has been externally funded. The one thing I would like to draw the council's attention to is the climate emergency event on the 29th and 30th of September, which will be in this building, and on the 29th it will include the launch of the Clean Air Crew, which is actually directed at schools across the borough. So I hope people will be able to attend that. So that's all I have to say for now, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Is this report seconded?
Seconded, Mayor, and I reserve the right for me to speak later.
Right. Oops. Are there any questions from any members of the council? Councillor David Howarth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, if I could commend this report for its breadth and its depth, a lot in there of achievements that have been accomplished. But unfortunately, there are some things that are missing from it as well. And if I could refer you to the section on active travel, I think we all want to see better facilities for walking, cycling and horse riding as well when it comes to bridle paths. But I do wonder what happened to the Howick Links, because we had a major announcement a couple of years ago, great blaze of publicity, Evening Post reports about the 350,000 we were going to spend on a joint bridleway, cycle path and footpath and a Penwortham loop. And nothing seems to have happened, and it if you'll excuse the pun because it's biodiversity, appears to have been kicked into the long grass. So while I commend the list of achievements that are there, unfortunately, I'm still waiting for a major achievement in my ward, which is the Howick Links, and I wonder if there is any sort of plan in the future to actually have it delivered, given the huge commitment we gave to it and the huge amount of publicity it had when it was launched.
Go on, Councillor Ashton.
Phone.
Yeah.
Right, sorry, thank you. Yes, I'm pleased to report that there is some progress taking place on that. There was a key meeting last week, and we will be bringing some proposals forward imminently now. And just before I sit down, thank you very much for the commendation on all the work that's been done. My thanks go to the officers, basically, because a lot of work has gone from officers into doing these things, as well as the support from members of the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Molyneux.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just on the recommendations to the council, where we've got 3, 4 and 5. 3 and 4 are saying that we would go to just note them, but 5 is saying that the government, to write to the government because they're looking to take that
money away. I've checked with one of the local MPs, Nigel Evans, who assures me that that isn't the case. So I wouldn't be very happy wanting to vote on it. And I take it this is a vote tonight, is it? Even though the first two are just noting. Are we just not noting everything?
Yeah, we are after council agreement on the third item on there. So 2 and 3 are for noting and the third.
So 2 and 3 for noting and the 5. So as I said, from my point of view, I couldn't agree with that because I've been told that that isn't the case. So I would obviously look into abstain if that was the case, just to let you know. Thank you.
Councillor Paul Foster, did you want to say something?
The answer that's been given there, yes, it's the recommendation to council from cabinet that we write to government because we do not support the government ditching its pledge as stated there. If Conservative members don't want to support that, then they can clearly vote against it there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Keith Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on the 11.6 million, that's the international fund to help other developing countries to reduce their pollution, because as we all know, pollution knows no boundaries. So I think that if you don't want to vote for that, I find that a little bit sad, but that's your prerogative. With regard to the report, I'd like to ask the cabinet member if she'd like to pass on thanks to all those involved in making that report possible. You don't have to thank me, it's all right. Especially Amara and Jordan, who are our interns who came here. And on the back of what they did here, they moved on to a successful career elsewhere. So if we can facilitate people's careers as well as our own forward planning with that, then it's got to be commended. Biodiversity is very important. We're all part of it. We're not watching it or anything like that. We are all involved in it. What we do affects everything. And if you take away a midge, for instance, the whole world will change. So I would like you to commend this. And I would like you to vote for the 11 points for the cabinet member to write to the government with regard to the international 11.6 billion pound fund that they promised. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Karen Walton.
Would like to thank the officers again for their comprehensive report and all what hard work has gone into this. I draw your attention to item 18 on page 37, which it says to combat the threat, the council sets a goal of rendering the borough carbon neutral, and the borough shall produce no net carbon emissions by 2030. The council has continued to make progress and reduce emissions since 2005. Says the borough as a whole has still a significant way to go to achieve the council's goal of being net carbon zero by 2030. So I hope this report goes a long way in achieving the council's goal of becoming net zero carbon by 2030, and to get everybody in the borough on board with trying to achieve this for everybody's sake. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matthew Farnworth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to thank the officers for this great report and like to echo Councillor Martin's comments about writing to the relevant government department. Now, having returned from a break in southern Spain this week where temperatures are almost 50 degrees, it's a startling reminder that we all need to play our part to help combat climate change. Now, we could be dealing with all sorts of issues. You know, people who are otherwise fit could be hospitalised with heat exhaustion, and many of our vulnerable residents could be at risk. So, you know, there's that issue, which is leads me on to air quality. So it's well known that rising temperatures across the globe, not just here in Safe Ribble, lead to a decrease in air quality. So I want to welcome the news in the report that there'll be a further consultation to revise the air quality action plan towards the latter end of the year. Now, it was startling as well when I read the report that it's estimated that pollution in the air leads to 4.6% of premature deaths due to air quality here in Safe Ribble. So I think it's essential that we all play our part to reduce our carbon footprint and encourage biodiversity. And I recommend that all members vote to write to the relevant government department. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Damien Brotherton.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if the members are aware, but there was an announcement on the 4th of July from the Reuters news agency. I've got it here, and you can all see it on your phones if you look at the internet. The British government said on Tuesday that claims it was dropping its international climate finance pledge are false, after The Guardian reported the country was planning to drop its flagship £11.6 billion climate funding pledge. The government remains committed to spending £11.6 billion on international climate finance, and we are delivering on that pledge, a spokesman from the government said. I don't know if anybody is aware of that up-to-date information, and our group would not be able to vote in favour of that recommendation, given that it's false information, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Wharton-Hardman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we're starting quoting news articles, I'd like to quote one from the 5th of July, the day after, which the BBC quotes, they've seen a government document regarding the scrapping of the £11.6 billion climate and nature fund pledging. That's also from a separate source, the day after Councillor Reverson refers.
Thank you. Councillor Matthew Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, just to commend the work that's been done to produce this raft of reports. I mean, it's really encouraging that we are at the forefront of this type of work, well ahead of many other councils, not just here in the Northwest, but across the country. So I think we're all in agreement that we should welcome this work and encourage it further. Just on the bit that the bullet point 5, I still think we should write to the government to express our concern. I do. Never forget, this is the government that said the NHS is safe in our hands. That didn't play out well. And the fact that they said they're not going to renege on this promise, frankly, does not fill me with confidence. I think we should still express our concerns. We should get our point out there, and we should make our views known loud and clear.
Thank you for that. Councillor Ange Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I too would like to thank the officers for the climate emergency update report. It's excellent that we're forging ahead with this. The only concern I've got is it says on page 51 about planning applications are routinely reviewed to request, where possible, air quality, noise quality and biodiversity elements are considered. I personally feel from a recent planning application I was involved with, which was the dog training facility centre at Lindell Lane in the heart of our borough, that there is very little evidence from that planning application where there was any consideration given to the biodiversity that resides there in the countryside, down a country lane in our borough, where there are examples of or evidence of badgers, foxes, bats. The Merseyside Bat Association did a biodiversity report about that site. They were shocked about that application and the effect it will have on bats there. And in that planning application, I saw very little evidence of any protection whatsoever for the wildlife in that area. And I hope that the report says we'll routinely review requests where possible. I really hope we see more evidence of that in future planning applications to protect our wildlife, because we're not doing enough at the moment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Pete Billinger.
Irrespective of which decision the government has made or not made on this money that is meant to be going to help poorer countries, I lived a considerable chunk of my life in... Oh, I'm sorry, have I not pressed the right button? Apologies. I need to... Yeah, and I will stand. I lived a fair chunk of my life in Sri Lanka and India. Across the ocean from Sri Lanka is the Maldives, with the highest point of 6 feet above sea level. The whole nation will be going under as a result of the emissions and the change to climate that comes largely from the industrial nations of the world, of which we are proud to be one in the G7, the 7 richest nations in the world. We've already cut our foreign aid budget. If we want to stop these people arriving in boats, we've got to make the rest of the world a better place to live. Because they come because this is a good place and because we are richer. And any principle to cut our help for those countries who are affected by our previous lifestyle and the carbon we have already put out in this country should be abhorrent.
Thank you. Councillor Michael Green.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry for this competition about competing press articles, but I think we've had one from the 4th of July. We've had that trumped by Councillor Wharton-Hardman saying the 5th of July. Well, I can go better because I've got one from the 10th of July. But what that is from is a publication called EDI, which some of you may not have heard of, but they're an expert in this field in terms of sustainability and climate change. And they are reporting that a government spokesperson has confirmed that it is not the case to remove this funding. And I could read it all out, but in the interest of saving time, I won't do, but you can look at that. But I'm just in the way of trying to take this forward, Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering if that recommendation 5 could be amended into a positive, just to say that we support that funding and would support it continuing, rather than the implication that we're attacking the government for removing that funding when it appears that that is not the case. So if the wording could be changed, maybe we could all collectively support this, which I think on something like this, it's always better if we get cross-party support. Just a thought, Mr. Mayor.
The question is, I suppose, do we wish to change the wording or do we wish to continue?
Wording, Mr. Mayor, on the recommendation, because I personally don't believe or recognise some of the reports that the government make, but the recommendation must be that this council absolutely condemns any attempt to remove that funding, and in our view, we would like to hear from the Secretary of State in writing what he or she is planning to do. Thank you.
Councillor Green, would that be? I'm not going to ask again.
Group position, but from my perspective, that's not quite going far enough, Mr. Mayor. But if we could go a little further, Councillor Foster, and we could collectively, the 48 of us present, could support that.
I don't think the Cabinet want to do that. We have Councillor Phil Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will trump Michael Green's because we've already had this evening a quote given by Councillor Molyneux, the Deputy Mayor, from one of our MPs, dated the 19th of July. So that's really can't get any more current than that. And with regard to an amendment, I wouldn't be voting for that amendment, I have to say, but I would vote for an amendment. And the amendment would be, and I'm not, rather than the council has concerns about, what we need to do is clarify the government's position. Now, if we wrote to the government and asked them to clarify that position, one way you're going to get an answer, a positive answer or a negative answer, whichever it may be, but you're going to get an answer asking the government to clarify their position. Thank you.
Amendment.
Yeah. So the question to Councillor Ashton is, do we want to amend what is put in the report?
We will be leaving the recommendation as printed, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay.
the Conservatives want to move. Councillor Smith.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Phil Smith has already spoken, but I'm going to allow you again, sir.
It's very kind of you, Mr. Mayor, because I'm coming back on the same subject and hopefully enhance it. So I am allowed to speak on it. Thank you very much for bringing me in.
Actually, that is at my discretion. So
yeah.
Please remember that.
Yeah, I will, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. It is a great shame that we can't do that, but and are we taking forward the amendment, Mayor, to clarify the situation with regard to the government's position? And are we going to vote on that amendment? Thank you.
No.
An amendment for a second. Put forward some wording.
Yeah.
Nobody seconded.
I know.
Really had that.
I know. One, we haven't had the amendment, which I will listen to an amendment, but we can only have a seconder once we have an amendment. So, Councillor Smith, would you like to put forward an amendment?
The amendment, Mr. Mayor, is to remove express the council's concerns about the plans to drop the 11.6 billion. So that's the amendment, and the amendment is to ask the Secretary of State to clarify the government's position with regard to the 11.6 billion pounds that the government have pledged. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
Second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
We've had the debate. It's whether we move to
Yeah, but that would be someone else
Yeah.
to
I
actually.
think you can ask if anybody's got any comments. The discussion's been had, so
Right.
people speak, and then if we did go.
Has anyone got any consideration on the amendment? Foster.
Thanks, Mayor. What I'd say to Councillor Smith and Councillor Green is clearly this amendment's just been done on the hoof at the meeting tonight. And if you want these issues to be taken seriously as we do, it would have really helped, Mayor, if Councillor Ashton had been presented with this amendment prior to the meeting, so it could have been considered. But we may be actually on to agenda item 10 by now. So we can't be doing and making amendments on the hoof like this. They need to be considered properly, and we will consider them. But please, can you approach the cabinet member prior to a council meeting, because this report has been in the public domain now for over a week, Mayor. So I think we do need to move to the vote on the amendment, Mayor, and then see if we can make progress. Thank you.
I am going to allow 2 speakers on this. Please keep it short. And then I propose we move to the vote on the amendment. Okay. Councillor Keith Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Getting me exercising today. As far as the amendment's concerned, I can understand why, but however, we keep hearing that it will be, it won't be. We don't know. We're in a bit, everything's up in the air. So I'd rather that we ask that we'd be disappointed if it's not going ahead, because there's no difference in the question apart from perhaps its language. We can flower it up if you want, I believe. But as far as I'm concerned, we need to know why they were considering cutting that in the first instance and why they keep changing. We've heard different stories, different reports. We need clarity. And the only way to do that is ask a direct question. Thank you.
And to sum up on his amendment, Councillor Phil Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the amendment we're making is a sensible amendment. And with regard to Councillor Foster's saying that it is in the public domain, it is. But I mean, the council needs to be clear. We don't see these papers until they're in the public domain. Thank you.
Okay. I've heard everything I need to hear. There's no one else asking to speak. I did say we would move to the vote. This is the vote on the amendment. Okay. Are you for or are you against the amendment? Please press your button now. So we are, have we finished? No, not quite. So we are against the amendment. We will now move to the substantial post. And I would ask you again to vote for or against or abstain on the original proposal. Thank you. That is clearly carried. Can you make a note of the numbers, please? Thank you. Okay, moving on to number 9, adoption of the Biodiversity Action Plan, pages 75 to 130. This item is for decision. Please can I ask the Cabinet Member of Neighbourhood and Waste Services, Councillor Ashton, to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So this report was on the Cabinet's agenda, the last meeting of the Cabinet, and I did make quite a lengthy introduction, giving some background to the report and picking out the key features. So I won't repeat that today because I'm mindful we've got a long agenda. We've just had quite a lengthy debate on one recommendation on one item. So the recommendation to council is to note the report and to adopt the Biodiversity Action Plan. Just a few brief words for those who weren't at Cabinet. So the council adopted its biodiversity strategy in 2022, and that included an interim action plan for 2022-23, and this report includes progress on that interim action plan. And one of the actions in that was to bring the full action plan to council, and that's what is before you this evening. It's if you've looked at it, it's a very wide-ranging action plan. Quite a number of those actions are actually out of our control, and it will require the council to put its own house in order, so to be an exemplar, but to be a community leader and also to be a partner. And it's only by working with local people, local organisations, that we're actually going to be able to achieve a goal that I think everybody, from the debate on the previous item, I think it's something that we all agree needs to be addressed within the borough. In terms of the action plan itself, one thing I would just draw people's attention to is the symbols that the team have helpfully included, and I think that shows how much interrelationship there is with the different strategies that are all around in this area. So one of the things that the team will be doing as they refresh these various plans is to look at bringing everything together into one plan, so that we can see how different actions are impacting on different areas of the overall agenda. So in terms of the way the action plan will be taken forward, there'll be 10 key actions each year. We've reported on 22-23 in this report. It sets out key actions for 23-24 at page 86. And so those will be reported on in the current year and bring back a full report to council next year. You will see that some of the key actions for the coming year relates to preparing for the introduction of biodiversity net gain, which will introduce a requirement on developers for any developments beyond one residential property to demonstrate a 10% gain in biodiversity. And there is a very complicated set of proposals for how that will come forward, still being worked on by government. And in terms of the council adopting the strategy last year, we've managed to get ourselves well ahead of the curve at this point in time, and we are able to start planning for how we will get the most benefit out of biodiversity net gain when that does come into legislation. So again, the fact that the council started early is again very it was a very forward thinking, and hopefully we'll be able to carry on doing that and bring in the biodiversity net gain both to our own estates but also to the rest of the borough. So that's all I actually wanted to say. I commend the report to the council. Another big thank you to the officers for the huge amount of work that have gone into the report, but also into actually doing the actions and giving us such an extensive plan. And I'm very happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this seconded?
Thanks, Mayor. Second the report and reserve the right to speak later for me. Thank you.
Absolutely fine. Right, we now move on to questions from members of the council, and I've got Councillor David Howarth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's such a detailed report that you could probably pick parts out of it and speak to it all night, which I've got no intention of doing. But you did mention there in your introduction that the council needs to get its own house in order and become an exemplar in what we do. And over the past few weeks, while I've been out working in my new body parts, I have been wandering through some of our parks and green spaces, and I couldn't help but notice that something that was first brought to my attention probably 20 odd years ago by what are now the Friends of Hurst Grange Park, that we have this habit of spraying around tree trunk bases and grass verges. And at the time it was brought to my attention because we managed to spray around the bottom of a tree and kill off some quite rare plants by doing so. And as I wander around now and look as I go through the parks, we're still spraying around the bases of trees, we're still spraying around the edges of grass verges, and it's almost like a burnt earth policy. So I really would ask that as part of this plan, we drive down certainly the use of glyphosates, and we certainly look to trial and find alternative measures of how we deal with weed control and managing our own particular parks and green spaces. Second observation on the report, if we go to the survey of residents, it is a bit alarming that we've produced this huge report on the responses of 79 residents. Now, in a population of about 140,000, that doesn't seem like a very good sample. And I can't believe that given how important climate change is and how to the forefront of people's thinking it is, that we've only got 79 people to actually make a response, and half of those appear to be from the western parishes. So clearly that they're more concerned out there, one might think. So perhaps the methodology of going out to consultation and how we try to engage with the public really does need to be looked at, and maybe this is an exercise we could perform again, maybe on an annual basis, or certainly to try and get much greater involvement. I mean, some of the comments that have been made there are absolutely spot on. You can't fault them, apart from the one or two of the sort of stranger people who think that we're suddenly going to have a 20-minute city imposed upon us, and that the state is going to be controlling us all. But in the main, the genuine comments are very valid. But perhaps it would be good if we could get a greater spread and more comments from a wider section of the public.
Thank you. Councillor Damien Bretherton.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd first of all like to thank Neil Martin, who put this detailed report together and his team. It is an excellent report. It's biodiversity is something that our group is very much in favour of. As a new councillor, just longer than 4 years ago, one of the first things that myself and my fellow councillor Matt Campbell did was approach the cabinet member at the time, Councillor Sue Jones, with our own detailed report of what we thought the biodiversity should look like. We had a discussion, and over the last 4 years, we've seen a lot of improvement. In our own ward, for example, we asked for more wildflower meadows. In fact, in our own ward, we hadn't had any wildflower meadows, as far as I'm aware, and now we've got 6. When we spoke to Councillor Sue Jones, we talked about the prospects of bug hotels, natural roadside verges, protecting pollinators. We even discussed hedgehog hotels, but they've not been mentioned anywhere. One thing that is missing that we did talk about 4 years ago was the bee bricks. Some local authorities, they make it a planning condition that should a developer want to develop out an estate, they must include bee bricks, which is something that pollinators nest in. And it's just a simple brick. It doesn't have to be in every house, but scattered around the site. We did think that was a good idea. As far as I'm aware, it's not part of our planning policy at the moment, but I just wondered if we could consider bee bricks going forward. And the obvious benefit to all this that we can see is it improves the visual aspects when we're driving or when we're walking or cycling around the community. Wildflower meadows, everything that we can see as part of the biodiversity does improve it improves the visual aspects, and it also improves mental health and well-being. I think that's a key issue, the mental health and well-being. And I'd like to say congratulations on what we've done so far. It's where we have cross-party working together for the benefit of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Will King.
Thank you, Mayor. I firstly just wanted to say I really welcome this to the council and hope everyone can support it. I was just wondering whether we can ensure that we can enhance this going forward as well. I'm sure we all want the best results from this. I see in my ward, Longton and Hutton West, it's a coastal ward, and as we go along the coast, there's actually nowhere for waste disposal along the entire way. I know this report speaks a lot about what we can do on land, but I was wondering, can we ensure that this can be enhanced by making sure that marine environments are considered as well, and what we can do to reduce plastic waste along those pathways?
Thank you, Councillor Wilkin. I think your light's still on. Thank you. I've no one else requesting to speak from council. Are there any questions from members of the public? I can't see anyone. We're now at an end of the debate on this proposal, so we'll go to the voting system. Thank you. No, I mean it. Thank you. Would the proposer like to sum up, or are we happy to move?
I will just respond briefly to the comments that have been made by members, which I was really encouraged by, actually. Glad that it's something that everybody feels that they can support. In terms of the points made by Councillor Howarth, in terms of the spraying and pesticides and so on and so forth, it is something that's very much in consideration. So the Western neighbourhoods are the other part of my portfolio beside this, and we are looking at that in terms of the neighbourhood strategy. So the teams are already starting to make changes in terms of the pesticides that they're using. If you're driving along, certainly along the A6, which I drive along quite a bit, you will see that the mowing patterns are changing, so that the making sure that the visibility displays are clear. But they're not doing as much towards the hedges to enable the hedgerow bases to thicken up, and then it's producing wildlife green corridors for wildlife to move about. So it's one of those things, I think, that we're never going to get there. It's constant work in progress. So that those things are actually in train, and there will be further reports on the naval strategy coming forward during I'm not sure when they're due, but I suspect during this year. And then in terms of the residents, I think one of the key things, it seems to me, is around awareness raising and communications on all of this, because I think more or less anywhere you go, people welcome the fact that the council is committed to biodiversity. But I think if we can I think we all have a responsibility to share some of the things that we are doing to draw people's attention to what we've got. And Jo Beeman, who is a member of the climate change team, and one of the key elements of her role is actually about communicating and engaging with community groups and engaging with schools and young people, because I think they are a key audience for these messages that we've all got a role to play in all of this. And I think the hubs can have a great role to play in all of this as well. And Councillor Bretherton, obviously I wasn't around in 2019, so Councillor Jones was my predecessor at that stage. And again, I think it's great that we're taking good ideas from everywhere in terms of how we take this forward. There are, and although B hotels aren't mentioned, so B bricks aren't mentioned specifically, there are things like hedgehog fences and where you can buy special fence panels that allow hedgehogs to travel through. I've got a meeting. Well, I haven't actually set it up yet. I'm not even sure Councillor Flannery knows we want to do it, but to actually talk about the crossover from the biodiversity strategy into the planning regime, because obviously we're working on the local plan now, but are the things that we can do in the meantime, because that's got quite a long lead in time. So it is being considered. And then Councillor King, in terms of the whole issue around plastic waste and so on and so forth, I've had a crash course in biodiversity, etc., and climate change so far. And then my next crash course is going to be on waste, because we're bringing the waste strategy through the next cycle of council, but clearly plastic waste will feature quite heavily in that. Thank you. So I move the report and the recommendations, Mayor. Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Councillor Ashton. Sorry for not giving you the chance to respond. Right, we now move to the vote. Press the buttons in front of you. Thank you. That is obviously carried. Thank you very, very much. Okay, item 10, Household Support Fund Round 4, pages 131 to 150. This item is again for decision. Can I please ask the Cabinet Member of Communities, Leisure and Wellbeing, Councillor Hunt, to present the report?
Evening. Let's hope this one's a lot less contentious. So, Household Support Fund Round 4. So I'm presenting this paper today to confirm South Ribbles Council's allocation of the Household Support Fund and agree the authority's acceptance of the funding. The recommendations are to accept the grant allocation of $680,000 and create a 2023-24 revenue budget accordingly. To proceed to develop a delivery plan which reflects specific criteria set out in the government guidelines, and to allocate and administer the grant. And that decisions on the delivery of the plan be delegated to the Director of Communities in consultation with a Cabinet Member for Communities, Leisure and Wellbeing. So to tell you a bit about the Household Support Fund enables the Council to support both our vulnerable residents and those who have been adversely affected by COVID and the cost of living crisis. The Communities team have consulted other council services, charities, community groups who support vulnerable households to understand where the support is needed most. The guidance from the Department of Work and Pensions states that the funding should primarily be used to support houses from both families, couples and singles in the most need of food, energy and water bills. It can also be used to support households with essential costs related to those items with wider essential costs. The Council's Community and Housing team has successfully delivered 3 previous rounds of the HSF, with excellent feedback received from the residents and community groups. The key change to round 4 includes the direct promotion of HSF to unpaid carers and care leavers, and up to 10% of the allocation is available provision of advice services. The funding will be delivered via a phased approach, with delivery of phase 1 starting immediately following council approval, and phase 2 following later in the year, ready for winter. 50% of the funding will be allocated to each phase, this being £306,000 per phase, when deducting the 10% administration fee. This phased approach allows us to use the funds to be more flexible and allowing teams to adapt changing community needs and evaluate what work needs to be done in phase 2. In phase 1, funds will be allocated to energy vouchers via the Citizens' Advice, home adaptations via the Council Warm Homes grants, grants to commission targeted services, step-up grants, holiday clubs, which have been so successful, uniform shop projects just being one of those, resource for advice services. We've also can feed into the disability grants facilities. As we know, a lot of this is actually needed now. So evaluation from phase 1 will determine how much funding is allocated to each of the 2 phases. In previous rounds, grants have been provided directly to key community partners to enhance the support that they provide to the service users. Although this has been successful, the reach of this support has been limited as it's only available to those already working with these partners. In this round 4, funding will be allocated to targeted commissions that provide support to specific groups in alignment with the HSF guidance. The method will be reviewed after phase 1. The funding will also be used to support residents who are struggling with energy bills. Citizens' Advice will deliver energy support and provide residents with vouchers towards covering the cost of energy. Initial rate of between £200 and £300 will be set as a guide, which residents can apply for. In line with the funding criteria, it will prioritise those who have not received other living cost payments. The Council will continue to develop and deliver the Warm Home Grant scheme that has been successfully delivered in previous rounds. This will allow residents to benefit from home adaptations and improve energy efficiency of their homes, such as boiler repairs, replacement boilers, fitting draft excluders, glazing improvements, and creating long-term saving on energy bills. The Community Development Team will hold a supply of supermarket vouchers supplied through LCC, which will enable quick support to residents who contact the council in an emergency and provide support within the mobilised period. The Warm Welcome initiative will be resumed in the winter, where residents will not only be able to keep warm without paying to heat their homes, but also have access to food and wider advice and support. The Council's successful school uniform project will be delivered throughout the summer and delivered to incorporate a wider support. This will include also having access to food, takeaway, and access to support services, included but not limited to Citizens' Advice, credit union and social prescribers. As in previous rounds, funding will also be allocated to step-up grants. These grants are used to support residents to fund things especially like white gloves, carpets, cleaning, removal services, debts and arrears. These grants will be a key resource for social prescribers. Finally, the fund will also be used to improve the local capacity for advice services via both CAB and the Council. I feel the most beneficial areas of this allocated funding is that we are also targeting people and households that have previously not managed to access funding. So that's something I'm very, very pleased about. So we'll be looking at unpaid carers, care leavers, households with disabled children, pensioners, single working people who may also be struggling with the cost of living. Not just single working people, single people, which has been very much neglected in the past, as well as households with children. So as we're all aware, the cost of living is hitting virtually everyone. This new phase opens the funding to several demographics that have struggled in the past to access funds. So the proposals are to accept the 680,000 and create a 2023-24 budget, to proceed to develop a delivery plan which reflects specific criteria set out in government guidance, and the decision on the delivery plan be delegated to the Director of Communities in consultation with the Cabinet Member of Communities, Leisure and Wellbeing.
Wow. Is this seconded? Thank you. Are there any questions from any members of the council? Councillor Hunter, your microphone is still on. Thank you. Councillor Caleb Tomlinson.
Councillor Jane Bell, we swap seats.
As ever.
As ever. We're going to cause bother.
I'm just trying to baffle you, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry about that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Jane Bell.
Thank you. Whilst I think this is a wonderful thing that we are doing, whilst I think it is going to reach people we haven't reached before, I think it's absolutely appalling we have to do it. I'm sorry. We live in a community which is officially not deprived by the government. We have deprived areas, but officially we are not a deprived area. And yet I see that we are going to find money to feed people, to heat people's homes, to find clothes off their back, to make sure that somebody who's disabled has got enough heating in the home, that single mums are okay, that people leaving care are okay, that carers are okay. It is appalling that we have to provide this. And I think it's wonderful we're doing it, but that's that other bit of me that is absolutely furious that we have to do it in the first place. But thank you for all your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Karen Walton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we will be supporting the recommendations, and I thank the officers again for a clear and informative report, and to offer the opportunity for the council to support the most vulnerable residents in our borough. The grant allocation of 680,000 from the Conservative government, from a total of over 19 million grant allocation for Lancashire, where the administration of the funding will ensure that households in most need will be supported during the cost of living crisis, and now include support for uncared carers and other specific groups which the fund didn't include before. So thank you.
Right, I've no other councillors wishing to speak. Are there any questions from the public? Do you need to respond to anything, Councillor Hunter, or can we move to the vote?
Jane, for her comments. Councillor Bell.
Don't forget to stand when speaking. Okay, I'm going to move straight to the vote then. For, abstain or against, if you could press your buttons now, please. Thank you. Yeah, it did. Oh. It's definitely carried. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Claire. Okay, we're going to move on to item 11, Refugee and Asylum Seeker Grant Fund, which you can find at pages 151 to 162. This item is for a decision. Please can I ask the Cabinet Member for Communities, Leisure and Wellbeing, Councillor Hunter, to present this report.
Good luck, Mr. Chairman. So this is the Refugee and Asylum Seeking Grant Funding. The report I'm presenting today provides a breakdown of the grant funding that the Council has received and is set to receive to support the refugees and asylum seekers, including Homes for Ukraine, UK refugee resettlement schemes, Afghan relocation and assistance policy, for full asylum dispersal and homeless prevention grants. You will see the breakdowns on the report in front of you. So the report recommends to Council that we should receive the funding allocations for each of the below schemes: Homes for Ukraine scheme, Asylum Seeker Dispersal scheme, UK Resettlement scheme, Afghan Relocation and Assistance Policy, and Homeless Prevention grants. And to create budgets for Homes for Ukraine sponsor thank you payments, Asylum Seeker Support and Community Integration, Refugee Support and Community Integration, together with Homeless Prevention, and to delegate authority to the Director of Communities in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Communities, Leisure and Wellbeing for decision-making related to budgets. The policies and procedures associated with refugees and asylum seekers are constantly changing, and consequently, so the support need for the pressures on local services. The recommendations will provide the communities team with the opportunity to further scope proposals for expenditure and align it to the needs of the refugee and asylum seekers, which will provide flexibility as needs evolve over time. To date, South Ribble has not had specific resources allocated to refugees and asylum seekers, but have been managed through existing resources within the community development and housing option schemes. Nevertheless, our community teams have supported many requirements. This includes, but is not limited to, attending drop-in sessions at Leyland Hotel, coordinating Homes for UK sponsorship payments, providing essentials, i.e. food, clothing, school uniforms, and preparing homes for refugee families, making referrals through to appropriate partnership agencies for support, using environmental health officers to undertake postcode checks to ensure safe housing, and supporting with housing teams to find emergency accommodation after the right to remain has been secured. Once the right to remain has been secured, that person has to be out of that emergency accommodation and with 28 days notice to find other accommodation, leaving little time to secure alternative living accommodation. As listed in the recommendations, there are several different schemes that the team will work on, and the report goes into some detail about each as they have their own specific spending criteria, and therefore I'm not going to be discussing it as we'll be here all night, but it is in the report. But community teams will be developing specific spend plans for each in line with the funding criteria. Priority areas for support include access to health and wellbeing opportunities such as gym memberships, exercise classes and alternative therapies, digital inclusion through access to devices and connectivity, health advocacy support, affordable transportation, and access to community-based support and spaces to socialise. Not meeting the government requirements, if specific guidelines are not followed when spending this grant, this essential money could be clawed back. Therefore, scoping work will be carried out to ensure that the community benefit is optimised, and we will ensure effective use of the funding. So again, the report recommends to Council to receive the funding allocation for each of the below: Homes for Ukraine, Asylum Seekers Dispersal Scheme, UK Resettlement Scheme, Afghan Relocation and Assistance Policy, Homeless Prevention Grant, and to create budgets for Homes for Ukraine sponsored thank you payments, Asylum Seeker Support and Community Integration, Refugee Support and Community Integration, Homelessness Prevention, and to delegate authority to the Director of Communities in consultation with a Cabinet Member for Communities, Leisure and Wellbeing for decision-makings relating to these budgets. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this seconded?
No, and I'm just going to briefly pass a couple of comments on this. It's pleasing to see at last that the council has some form of funding to support the refugees, and it is ultimately disappointing at the low levels of support, though, and particularly I don't like the way that the government are prioritising some refugees over others. It doesn't seem morally right, that whatsoever. And I'd urge our members to have a look and watch a programme on Channel 4 called Evacuation. And if you ever want to see how badly managed this government's foreign policy is when it comes to refugees, watch that programme, where British foreign policy is being decided by young men and women with a parachute regiment, deciding whether refugees, Mayor, are rescued or die. And I think this whole government policy in respect to refugees is flawed, it's wrong, and I commend and commit this council will give every ounce of support it always can to any refugee that comes to South Ribble, and they are always welcome. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the council? I've got Councillor Matthew Farnworth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll try and keep this short, but just want to thank council officers for the hard work and dedication that they've shown to help the asylum seekers and refugees who have come here to South Ribble. They've fled their homes in volatile situations such as Ukraine and Afghanistan, and as well as many other places. I think it's important that we remind each other about the hurt, fear and sacrifices that many of them have faced before coming to South Ribble. Many of them have been victims of human rights abuses, war, or even human trafficking. And I just want to point out that as a councillor and a local representative, I'm absolutely appalled with the Conservative government's rhetoric on asylum seekers and the mainstream media's failure to show the harsh realities they face. Now, I'm sure I don't need to remind you of many of the failed schemes, such as the ARAP scheme. I'm a caseworker in my day job, and I deal with all sorts of different asylum seekers and immigration issues. And fundamentally, the Home Office is not fit for purpose. Now, as well as in my day job, I was recently invited to an event held by the British Red Cross in Preston for asylum seekers. Now, the event was attended by people who reside in Home Office accommodation all across central Lancashire, including families here in South Ribble. Now, I believe the feedback of South Ribble from many of the asylum seekers was very good, and they were very complimentary about the council and the council officers, which is always good to hear. Now, many of them have had a positive experience here in South Ribble, which is a far cry from the inhumane suffering that people endure, in Napier Camp and, I'm sure in the glorified container ship that we're seeing at Portland now. And I know that many of them use the local facility, integrating with local people, playing cricket and football on the sports pitch at the recently renovated Strawberry Valley Park that's close to the Leyland Hotel. So that's always good to hear. But people did also raise a few concerns that they felt a little bit isolated, now out of the way of people from their own culture and support networks, such as mosque and community organisations. And it did get raised to me that the considerable amounts of, quite a long journey away in Preston. Each of those asylum seekers only receive £9.58 per week. So a trip to Preston is a considerable amount of money. So I'd just like to, ask the Councillor Hunter and the officers if we can get together and, try to come up with some sort of strategy to either get the community leads and faith leads from Preston into South Ribble, or come to some sort of agreement to try and get them into Preston, and so they don't feel more isolated. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to respond to that? Thank you.
Thank you. I think that is an absolutely brilliant idea. The officers are well and truly on this anyway about integration. They've done a fantastic job putting this together. I do think that is a great idea, and I'll happily accept.
Thank you. Councillor Jane Bell.
Thank you. Man's inhumanity to man has gone on for thousands of years, and I do hope that we in South Ribble do not join that club, that our humanity is on the good side and not the bad side. And it's nice to hear that the refugees who are around and about feel comfortable here. My concern is that once they are accepted as their asylum seeking, and they've been accepted, they've got 28 days to find permanent accommodation. If I wasn't a lady, I would be saying a very rude word now, because that is an impossible task. We haven't got permanent housing for our people on our housing list. I think it's 4,000 on the housing list at the minute for the social housing. To try and find private accommodation, it's exorbitantly expensive. You're looking at what, for a 3-bedroom house, about £1,000 a month? Absolutely ridiculous. So staying 28 days to find somewhere to live, you're putting them on the street. You're putting them into, well, houses of multiple occupancy, and you're throwing them back into, if anybody remembers Rackman, who was a landlord in the 60s, who was a real nasty piece of work, we are throwing them back into that. We must stop that happening. I don't know how, but we've got to. There's got to be something we need to be working with our other charities and agencies that are used to homeless youngsters. I mean, I work with homeless youngsters and open my home up to them. So whether or not that is something we need to look at on a temporary basis when they reach that 28 days, I don't know. But we need to be thinking very, very seriously about what happens when somebody has been accepted as a citizen of our country. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Bell, I've got no other council members. Thank you. Councillor Karen Walden has just come in.
I would like again to thank the officer who prepared this report, because it really gives us a clear update on this refugee and asylum seeker grant funding and how it will be spent. The £900,000 that we've received from the government will go a long way to support the asylum seekers and the refugees in the area, and we will support the recommendations.
Thank you. Karen, I think you've just switched yourself on again. Right, there are no other councillors down. Do we have any members of the public wishing to speak? No one is indicating. Councillor Hunter, would you like to sum up, or can we move to the vote?
Just to say thank you again to Councillor Farnworth and Councillor Bell. Our officers are absolutely amazing, and this 28-day policy is appalling. But our officers work tooth and nail to rehouse all refugees. So just to say, they should be highly recommended for the work we do here at South Ribble. So that's all I wanted to say, really. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hunter. Right, then we move to the vote. Again, please press your relevant buttons for abstain or against, and please vote now. It's clearly carried. Clearly carried. I believe you. I believe you. Okay then, item 12, a new budget for Tardygate Play Area and Skate Park, pages 163 to 168 in your pack. This item is for decision. Please can I ask the councillor for Finance and Public Protection, Councillor Tomlinson, to present this report.
Thank you. It gives me great pleasure to bring this report to council, not least for the fact that it gives me a chance to remind everybody of our record on refurbishing neighbourhood playgrounds. For you new members who weren't here before the last election, I'm happy to remind you that between the years 2010 and 2019, under the previous Conservative administration, not one neighbourhood playground in South Ribble was refurbished, not one. We committed when we took over that we would address these concerns, and in the 4 years that we led this council, assisted and supported by our friends in the Liberal Democrats. We were able to refurbish playgrounds at Seven Stars, Leedale Green, Hague Avenue, Moss Side Green, Strawberry Valley Park, the Home in Bamber Bridge, Birch Avenue in Penwortham, on Worden Park, on Hurst Grange Park, and others too. And we'd already built into the capital programme for the coming year at least 2 playgrounds in the Western parishes, one at Margaret Road in Penwortham and King George V also in Penwortham. Our commitment to these playgrounds was already demonstrated going forward. At this stage, I want to commend the 3 new councillors for Lostock Hall, Councillor Pritchard, Councillor Gabbert and Councillor Stringfellow, who literally knocked on hundreds of doors in that local community in the months leading up to the previous election. And one of the messages that came through loud and clear was that there was a community who, whether rightly or wrongly, felt they didn't get an even shout from South Ribble Borough Council. We are a responsive and listening councillor, Mr. Mayor. One of our commitments to our residents is that we listen and we act. And we'll hear later on in the agenda, I believe, another change that we're going to make to show the people of Lostock Hall that we listen to their concerns. We've identified funding that is within the budget, so this comes at no extra cost to the residents of South Ribble or indeed to this council in terms of its planning, its capital budget. But we do have funds in other budgets that we can move. And I'm delighted tonight to be able to come to council and ask that they approve this new budget that will provide a brand new state-of-the-art playground for the young people of Lostock Hall and Farrington West. Technically, I'm talking about Longton Hall, Lostock Hall. Technically, if you want to do that, it is in Farrington West. But if you want to do that, it's in Lostock Hall. But I think this will be it will join a long list of fantastic facilities we've got for our young people to get outside, get some fresh air, get some exercise and mix and mingle with their peers. Also, we have heard from right across the borough from young people their wish that we look at the possibility of a skate park / BMX park. BMX is something I can remember. We were talking about BMX track 10 years ago and someone said it would never last. It's a fad. And now, of course, it's an Olympic sport and one that Great Britain does very well at. And I think any way we can encourage our young people to get out and take part in both skateboarding and BMXing is to be encouraged. Should council approve this tonight, my overt role in this will then be passed on. The finance will be agreed and identified, and I will pass the responsibility for delivery onto Councillor Bylinski-Gelder in her portfolio responsibilities. I'm sure that the new neighbourhood hub with its new chair will really look forward to influencing and shaping how this looks. With that, I have nothing more positive to say, so I'm going to sit down. I commend the report to council, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tomlinson. Is this seconded?
I'd like to second this and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Right, are there any questions from any members of the council? We're flooding in. Councillor Keith Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The inclusion of a skate park for South Ribble is quite important. We've tried in the past when Councillor Phil Smith was in charge. It didn't seem to happen. It turned into a car park. So okay. Isn't it? I had the pleasure of knowing one of the people who were instrumental in the skate park in Preston at Moore Park, and in fact, Councillor Molyneux also congratulated the design and build of that when he was a consort for the Preston Mayor when he went to open it with her. It's vitally important. The person I know was instrumental in that, and he has a lot of insight to that and the skating scene and the BMX scene. So I've already approached him. He's willing to help out. So I think that's a positive. He is one of my residents as well. So I congratulate the Cabinet for putting this together and pushing it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Peter Gabbett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank the Cabinet member and the Labour group on behalf of all the Lost at Call councillors for bringing forward these improvements to council tonight. It is what we campaigned for, what residents asked for, and I'm glad to see it will be delivered. And I think it just goes to show to residents that they can be confident in this administration and that it will continue to bring forward more investment, more improvements to Lost at Call and the wider borough for the benefit of the communities that we serve. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that. Councillor Karen Walton.
Something to cheer about. I welcome the investment of the £275,000 for the playground refurbishment and improvement at the Tidygate Park in Carrington West and Lost at Call. 4 years ago, on many occasions, I've requested a refurbishment of the play area, but my request was denied as it was not in the current list for refurbishment and now has become a priority for this council, which I'm glad it has. But I would very much like to be involved in bringing this project forward as the ward councillor and hope that a full and comprehensive community and young people's consultation is carried out before any update, changes and improvements are made to the site, as I've already received emails from residents concerning the skateboarding side of the recommendation and the antisocial behaviour that could result in such a facility being built so close to residential properties. So I request that I am included in any project development or consultation so that I can bring forward the concerns of my residents. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Damien Bretherton.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually delighted that we've got a BMX track. As you'll know, Chair, in our community hub, Councillor Campbell and I for the last few years have been lobbying and asking you to put forward a BMX track. We were looking at the Lost at Call area, as you recall, which was probably the area that would have the space to see a facility like this. The reason why Councillor Campbell and myself have been lobbying for a BMX track in our community hub area was because several years ago, not long after we got elected, first elected as councillors, we had a BMX track that local teenagers built in some woods in Carwood in our ward. And the local teenagers were very respectful. They spent a lot of time with spades and shovels making a very good BMX track. Unfortunately, Lancashire County Council did not like it, that it was on their land, and they removed it. So the teenagers have been looking for somewhere, a facility like this ever since, and myself and Councillor Campbell have been lobbying for a purpose-built on land owned by the council that will be there for local teenagers to enjoy, which they currently have not got in our community, our old community hub area. So I'm very much in favour of that, and I'd like to echo Councillor Walton's remarks about there being a consultation as well, just to make sure that the local residents in that area are happy with it. The area that we did think about initially was the piece of land at the back of St Catherine's. We did ask the officers to go away and do some work on that. They've obviously identified this particular area. It was one of our campaign pledges, and it's certainly a win for Councillor Campbell and I to have one of our pledges met in such a short period of time. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I well remember it coming to the hub, and I thank Jackie Mort for bringing it up. Councillor Paul Wharton Hardman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, of course, echo the comments of Councillor Gabbard fully. The overwhelming comments I heard about improvements on this park being needed, expressed by residents as I knocked on the many doors in Farrington West during the recent elections, underscores the significance of this initiative. And as stated by Councillor Tomlinson, it's applaudable to my Labour colleagues in Lostock Hall for taking this issue and running with it, meaning this paper is being brought this evening. I'm delighted that this is coming forward, as it will undoubtedly enrich the community, not only enhancing facilities for our young children with the new playground, but also the older youths in the community who so desperately need more facilities like this within our borough. And I'm confident that should the approvals in the next paper go ahead with the changes to the community hubs, the hub will play a full part in driving the consultation on how this will look, not only with local residents, but also the people it matters to the most, which is the youth of our community.
Thank you. Councillor John Rainsbury.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I certainly welcome this BMX park. It's wonderful to have another one in the borough, as it wouldn't. Probably don't know we actually got one in the Western parishes. And if you like to come along at the weekends to have a look and watch the children on the bikes at BMX Bike in Muchhool, it's been there for some years now, and I think the land was donated by a local farmer. But come and have a look, it's used and there's no problems with it.
Whoops, thank you for that, Councillor Rainsbury. Okay, Councillor Margaret Smith, have you... No. Councillor Margaret Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Tomlinson, thank you for your address this evening. It was very enlightening. Just one or two things I'd just like to pick up with you. While I welcome this, I really do, and certainly the amount of money of 275,000. Tomorrow morning, I shall be having a meeting with our officers regarding New Longton, where we have got a much smaller sum for the refurbishment of New Longton Park. And I wondered if I could ask you if I could have a meeting with you, along with my other colleague here, my husband, so that we could possibly get some more money to actually refurbish New Longton Park, because the amount of money that's actually there at the moment, which is 75,000, 78,000, I think it is, and a little bit of 106 money, is not going to go very far with what needs to be done. So on the basis that you're very generously giving Lostock Hall a very nice refurbishment of 275,000, perhaps we could have a meeting and see if we can get a little bit more for the Western parishes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Aniela Bilinski-Gelder.
Thank you. So I'd just like to come back, having heard some of the comments, and reiterate actually quite a few of the comments that Councillor Tomlinson started with. I think that it's really important that we do state that we are a listening council. We do have 3 representatives now in Lostock Hall, and I hope the people of Lostock Hall can feel that Labour's in charge. They've got 3 Labour representatives on the council and that they're being heard. From my point of view, having already been the member for community, this skateboard park and the play area and the location that it's in, the community involvement in some respects is the primary thing as opposed to the skateboard park and the play area. From my point of view, the skateboard park could end up being quite a focus for people for travelling from different places. I travel to Exton with my daughter, and they've got an amazing skateboard park which was designed and developed by the people that use it now, as well as Moore Park. So I'd love to see not necessarily the people in this room who never use the skateboard park design it, but the people who are going to use the skateboard park design it. And as the person who's got to deliver it, that is where the emphasis for me is going to be. It's going to be for my daughter and all the people of her age and that to design the skateboard park. I'm really pleased to hear that Karen's excited about it, because if we want the skateboard park to be bigger and extended and we want to do what the young people, so we might need to approach Farrington Parish Council for some extra money. So that would be it's really promising that you're so positive about it. And you're more than welcome to participate in the consultation like everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no other councillors wishing to speak. So are there any questions for members of the public? I said looking around and couldn't see any. So we're at the end of the debate on this proposal. So we will go to the vote. For, against or abstain. Please press your buttons now. Definitely carried. Thank you. Okay, item 13, enhancement of community hub structure, pages 169 to 172. This item is for a decision. Please can I ask the Cabinet Member for Communities, Leisure and Wellbeing, Councillor Hunter, to present the report.
Thank you, Chair. It's me again. So this is about the enhancement of the community hub structures. So the purpose of the report is to bring forward a proposed enhancement to the boundaries of the community hubs and recommends the appointment of new chairs and vice chairs of the council's community hubs.
What is your point of order?
Could I seek some advice, please? No,
it's point of order. You're meant to ask me the point of tell me the point of order.
Right, okay. Part 4A of the council procedure rules, our council standing orders, i.e. the rules of engagement of which we are all subscribe. Paragraph 23 refers to a motion which has been decided within the last 6 months and how that motion may be rescinded. I would refer you to the minutes of the meeting of May that we passed at the beginning of this meeting this evening, when we took a decision on both the borders of the community hubs and the boundaries, and also upon the said chairpersons and vice chairpersons of those community hubs. That decision was taken 2 months ago. I'm presuming Councillor Hunter, if she's proposing the report before us, is trying to rescind that decision. Can I therefore seek clarity that all the points set out in paragraph 23 have been fully complied with? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'm going to have to call recess for 5 minutes while we go for a comfort break. Please, 5 minutes only though. Okay, I expect to be starting again at 8 o'clock on the dot. Thank you. Okay, can we have order, please? Thank you. That went on far too long. Right, we have something which I'm going to let Chris Meister inform you of.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Right, so the point of order, the challenge relates to Standing Order 23, which addresses the reconsideration of matters that have previously been decided by the council within the last 6 months. This provision 23.1, a motion or amendment to rescind a decision made at a meeting of the council in the last 6 months may not be moved unless the notice of motion under Rule 10 is signed by at least 5 members. And there's other text. The advice that I've given to the mayor is that the use of the word rescind is very key. Rescission's got a technical meaning, and it basically means to revoke or cancel. And the meaning of that means as if the decision never took place. The decision was operative in May, and the chairs either did or could have taken up those roles in that period. So it is not a complete revocation of the original decision. And the fallback point on the, it's not fallback point, but the secondary point in relation to the decision taken in May was that it was solely to the appointment of the chairs. And that's quite clear from the minutes of the meeting. The decision of council was the appointment of the chairs. The decision before members tonight is about the constitution of the boundaries of some of the community hubs changing, and then a follow-on decision from that because of those changes, appointment of new chairs. So there's two pieces of advice. One is the use of the term rescission. I don't view the matter before you tonight as a rescission of the decision in May. And secondly, even if it were a rescission, the recommendations before you tonight are actually on different subject matter.
That basically means we can carry on with this because it is a totally different matter that will have consequences which will be voted on. But it is a completely different matter that is before the council tonight as to just the choosing of chairs, because we are doing another positive, or might be doing another positive action, which would then have further implications, as in the choice of other chairs. I do accept what's said, but if Michael would like to say something, I would certainly allow him to.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Apologies to everybody for causing a delay. I've listened to the advice. I accept the advice. I would take a different interpretation, I have to say, but I respect the decision which I assume you're going to make on the basis of the advice from the monitoring officer. And on that basis, I think we need to proceed with the item before us. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Green. Sorry about calling you Michael there. Right, so we go back to it. Can I please ask Councillor Hunter to present the report?
So the purpose of this report brings forward a proposed enhancement of the boundaries of the community hubs and recommends the appointment of new chairs and vice chairs of the council's community hubs. Recommendations to the council are that the council approves the proposed amendments to the community hub boundaries as outlined in this report, and that the council approves the appointment of chairs and vice chairs for the period of 12 months until the first business meeting of the council in May 2024. The reasons for the recommendations: to ensure we continue to enhance the community hubs by amending the boundaries of the hubs, and appointments are made to the chairs and vice chairs positions. So the background to the report: after consulting with councillors, council partners and members of the public, it has been proposed to reverse the decision taken on the 15th of May 2019 to change the boundaries of the community hubs. The proposal to re-establish the previous community hub boundaries is made in order to strengthen communication with members of the local community and to increase their involvement in council decisions about services which affect them. During the election period, members of our community in the central villages spoke very strongly about the re-establishment of the central villages hub. The changes to the hubs are detailed in paragraph 11 of this report. It is also necessary to recommend the appointment of chairs and vice chairs of the community hubs until the first business meeting of the council in May 2024, the municipal year set out in paragraph 12 of the report. So it is proposed to reverse the 15th of May 2019 changes to the hub boundaries and also change the name of some of the community hubs. The proposed arrangements are Western Parishes, which will be Hoole, Longton, Hutton West, New Longton and Hutton East. Penwitham, which will be Broad Oak, Charnock, Howick and Priory and Middlefirth. Central Villages, as it's now will be called, Farrington East, Farrington West and Lostock Hall. And Leyland, which consists of Broadfield, Buckshaw, Worden, Earnshaw Bridge, Leyland Central, Moss Side, Seven Stars and St Ambrose. And Bamber Bridge, Waltonley Dale and Eastern parishes. So that would be Bamber Bridge East, Bamber Bridge West, Count Green and Gregson Lane, Samlesbury and Walton, Waltonley Dale East and Waltonley Dale West. So the following chairs and vice chairs are recommended for appointment. The Leyland hub will be Councillor Colin Sharples, Vice Chair Councillor Jane Bell. Penwitham, Councillor Will Adams and Vice Chair Councillor David Howarth. Western, the Chair will be Councillor Margaret Smith and the Vice Chair Councillor Will King. Bamber Bridge East, Waltonley Dale and Eastern, Chair will be Councillor James Gleeson and Vice Chair Councillor Emma Stevens. And Central Villages, Councillor Paul Wharton Hardman and Vice Chair Leslie Pritchard. Councillor Leslie Pritchard. So I propose this to council.
Thank you. Is it seconded?
Reserve the right to speak if I may later. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Claire Hunter, your microphone's still on. I do that all the time. I have no one. Oh, yes, they've all come in now. Thank you. Councillor Paul Wharton Hardman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As a Farrington councillor and one of the proposed chairs of the hubs, I stand here with great enthusiasm to welcome the changes to the community hub model, especially the introduction of central villages. The change signifies the administration's commitment to drive positive change and deliver impactful projects by listening to our communities. As was stated by the Cabinet member during the recent election campaign, whilst walking the doorsteps in Lostock Hall alongside my Labour colleagues, I witnessed the community feeling a connection with Farrington. And whilst both Farrington thanks the Leyland Hub for including us and bringing forward lots of fantastic projects in our area, and I'm sure Lostock Hall feels the same for the Bamber Bridge Hub. They feel a connection together, and this change will deliver that. With the creation of the Central Villages Hub, we're doing what we, in essence, as a council should be doing, and that's listening to our communities, being inclusive, adaptable and forward-thinking. These changes were made 4 years ago. They're now being reviewed in line with our community's current need, and again, I welcome those changes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Margaret Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for this report. I think it is most welcome that we're actually reverting to what was there in 2019. It's something that we have been lobbying for quite some time, and I agree with it. It should. The Leyland one was far too big, I'm sure. There's just a small thing. You've got the Western down. Could we please revert to what we were, which is the Western parishes? We've been the Western parishes since 2000 when it was originally set up as, I can't remember what we were then. We've had three, I can't remember what we were called then. But if we could be Western parishes, please, we would be most grateful.
Councillor Hunter.
I've got to apologise because it is actually Western parishes.
Okay, Councillor Colin Sharples.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I support the decision to return the Farrington wards back with Gloucester Call to form the Central Villages hub. Whilst it has been a pleasure to work with the members from Farrington over the past 4 years, and I do most sincerely thank them for their contributions and their support, I do feel, and in the nicest possible way, that it probably wasn't the right fit. I seem to recall in 2019, Farrington do not consider they're part of Leyland. I remember that conversation, and Gloucester Call do have a great affinity with Farrington, etc. So, yeah, it also made for a hub that was large and difficult to administer. I noticed Reece Drew sat at the back. You'll know exactly what I mean when I say 9 wards, 18 councillors and 1 CDO was really quite difficult at times. But I think we're on our 3rd CDO, aren't we? Yeah, so from an officer point of view, it was a difficult hub. But I think the renewed link with Gloucester Call under the chairmanship of Councillor Wharton Hardman will provide many opportunities for members of the new Central Villages hub to engage with their communities going forward, and I wish them every success in doing so. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Michael Green.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just pick up on a couple of points of detail first before I add any further comments? Recommendation 3, we're approving the appointment of chairs and vice chairs for the period of 12 months until the business meeting in May. I believe that will be 10 months rather than 12. And on page 170, the proposed vice chair of Central Villages, I think Councillor Pritchard's name may be spelled incorrectly. So with those amendments, I'm actually content to support the report that's before us this evening, Mr. Mayor. The changes which were made 4 years ago were completely the wrong changes in terms of community engagement and working with communities. Gloucester Call and particularly Farrington West and Farrington East had something of a close-knit community. They'd worked together for some years previously and they should never have been split. They were split for the wrong reasons, and unfortunately it's taken the administration 4 years to accept that they got it wrong. But nevertheless, we welcome that change of heart and look forward to the success of the 5 hubs moving forward. I'd like to wish Councillor Wharton Hardman and Councillor Pritchard the very best in terms of that new hub. I'll certainly, hopefully, engage with you as the county council for part of that area. I would like to engage with the new hub moving forward, and also wish Councillor Gleeson and Councillor Stevens the best for their new hub as well in Bamber Bridge and the eastern area. I hope we do make a success of this because the hubs are really important to our communities and how we can improve the quality of life for residents. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for that, Councillor Green. I have no more. Oh, Councillor Karen Walton.
Very much, Mr. Mayor. So I congratulate the administration on listening to what the Conservative group wanted to happen to the community hub boundaries for over the last 4 years. 4 years ago, this administration changed the boundaries of the community hubs, and 4 years ago, I expressed my concerns at every opportunity that the residents in Farrington West especially will be defranchised and that the community of Farrington and Gloucester Call and Tardygate will be split and feel abandoned, which has obviously come true. This has been clear with the comments on the doorsteps during the last election, but the report in item 7 states that after consultation with councillors, council partners and members of the public, it has been proposed to reverse the decision taken on the 15th of May 2019 to change the boundaries of the community hubs. And I did ask for a copy of this consultation as I and my colleagues have never been consulted on any part of the recommendations to the changes, even though we do really accept them. But I hope that working with the new chair and vice chair will be something that we all can get along with and work to the benefit of the community in Gloucester Call and Farrington.
Okay, I've got 2 names left, after which I would like to move to the vote, but I will allow a summing up if need be from Councillor Hunter. But Councillor Peter Molyneux.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say it's good that we've got back to how we were a number of years ago, and the fact that Bamber Bridge and Watley Dale are joining Sandringham Walton and Captain and Gregson Lane is good news for everyone as far as I'm concerned. It would be, with only having 4 in that area before and very little funding available,
now as we've got more areas joining together, I think that will be a lot better for everyone concerned, and I look forward to working with all the new councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Molyneux. And to finish it off, Councillor Paul Foster.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll be brief. It's really pleasing to hear that the council is fully supportive in all areas of the changes that we're making. But Councillor Walton, you did ask a specific question about the consultation. It was local election results, because we spoke with every resident in the borough. So if the mayor wishes, we can send you a copy of the local election results again for you to look at, because that's a consultation we had, and we spoke to the residents, particularly with central villages. If I'm being bluntly honest with you, I've never heard it referred to as the central villages before until I knocked on a door in Lostock during the local elections. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. So, Councillor Hunter, do you want to add anything to the debate?
Thank you, Chair. No, I'd just like to recommend this to council.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will now. Oh no, have we got any members of the public wishing to speak on this? I'm looking round and I can't see any. So we will move quickly to the vote. For or against or abstain, please push your buttons now. Clearly carried. Thank you. Okay. Right, so South Ribble Equality Objectives 23 to 27, pages 173, 186. This was due for a decision, and it was going to be Councillor Alty. Could I ask Aniela Belinsky-Geldof to present it, please? Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, Jackie's really disappointed that she can't present this. She's asked me to do it in her absence. But I'd just like to emphasise that you really, really did want to be here to present this. So I am just going to read what she's written. And if anyone does have any questions, then they can just write to council and we'll send the replies. So I'm just going to read it verbatim. I'm here tonight to present the statutory equality objectives to 2027. I'd like to thank Howard and the wider team for the report produced. This is a necessary document, often only seen as useful when a personal experience calls into question an individual's right to be treated equitably. There are several reasons why statutory equality objectives hold significance. I'm just going to list the significant ones. The fulfilment of legal compliance mandated by legislation, the promotion of transparency and accountability, allowing for scrutiny, the provision of focus and prioritisation on areas of concern, allocating resources and identifying measurable outcomes, to enable systemic change following the identification of structural inequalities, facilitating transformation and change where necessary, employee engagement and well-being based on inclusive policies, fostering a sense of fairness, respect and belonging, embedded impact assessments, resulting in fewer unintended forms of discrimination, and finally, social responsibility and reputation. Organisations that demonstrate a commitment to equality and diversity through statutory objectives enhance their reputation as socially responsible entities, positively influencing South Ribble Borough Council's relationships with stakeholders, including customers, partners, investors and the wider community, which in turn attracts diverse talent, reflecting the Council's commitment to sustained development of an inclusive and equitable workplace. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is that seconded? Thank you. Okay. Are there any questions from the council? Councillors? Councillor Wesley Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to prolong the meeting, but I didn't want to let the opportunity pass to speak on something that's really important. And me too. I'm a little bit upset to not see Councillor Alty here, because I know she's got a real fire in her belly to really tackle some of this stuff. And you can see that the way that this report's been put together, it's not just a tick box exercise. And I think the Windrush reception today was a real timely reminder of why, you know, in society we can't take our foot off the pedal when it comes to eliminating discrimination. I was particularly keen to see the Youth Council mentioned in the report and engaging with them as a society, because ultimately they're the future of our borough. And I thought there were some really good, smart objectives in the report as well. And I think the report in its entirety is just really timely. Remember to, everyone in the chamber, that in and out of the chamber, we have a duty to, stand up for things, call out things if we don't like it, and we're all part of the change. It's not just letting it happen to us. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Wharton-Harben, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, not wanting to prolong the meeting. As the lead member for Social Justice and Equality, I've worked very closely with Councillor Alty on a number of schemes. And whilst we have a statutory duty under the Equality Act to publish our equality objectives, I do know that this council's commitment and obligation to creating an inclusive and equitable workplace and borough stands much more further than just our legal duty. All of us, harassment and victimisation, all of us agree it has no place in South Ribble. And by standing together against these harmful behaviours, putting in place policy and these standards, we can show our community that we have an inclusive workforce and we want to make our neighbourhoods much safer and more compassionate places to live. I know if Councillor Alty was here, she would have said her speech and then added a lot more of her personal charm to it. So I'm sorry she can't be here with us this evening. But I do obviously get the feeling that this is going to be unanimously supported, and would ask councillors who are feeling not that they want to support this, which I'm sure there'll be nobody, please do so, because it will support us as a council to continue to strive for continual improvement and ensuring that all our services are accessible for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the council wishing to speak on this? No. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak on this? In which case we will move to the vote. For, against or abstain, please push your buttons now. That's clearly carried again. Thank you. Item 15, South Ribble UK SPF programme, pages 187 to 198. This item is for decision. Please can I ask the leader of the council, Councillor Foster, to present the report.
Thanks, Mayor. This report is to provide members with an overview of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, known as the UK SPF, and it's the framework for this council at South Ribble. Mayor, following on from the launch of UK SPF in April 22, the council was invited to submit an investment plan by August of the same year. And in there lies one of the challenges that this council and every council has had in respect to the UK SPF, where we had to set out the local priorities and outcomes we wish to achieve. And these had to be aligned to the interventions of the fund, which has an overarching aim to build pride in place and increase life chances. The council received notification from the government of December that its allocation for 2022-23 and then an indicative allocation for 23-24 and 24-25. UK SPF provides funding for a 3-year period now from April 2022 to March 2025. South Ribble Borough Council was allocated just under 3.4 million and for this period just stated. The council also received £20,000, Mayor, capacity funding to support the development of the investment plan. Due to the value, complexity and time-limited nature of the UK SPF, the general approach adopted for year 1 of the programme was to align the fund with existing council activities that did actually support the UK SPF priorities, particularly where it would bring added value. Further work has been undertaken to develop the actions for 23 to 25, which were designed and scoped to ensure delivery within the timescales of the programme. The report in front of you, colleagues, sets out a framework for delivery of the UK SPF programme, including interventions, outputs, outcomes and spend profile. The UK SPF, Mayor, has an overarching aim of building pride in place, reducing inequalities and increasing life chances across the UK with 3 key investment priorities identified. Communities in place, supporting local businesses and people and skills. To summarise, UK SPF is designed to complement, not duplicate, other provision, and it is recommended that the wider funding landscape for people and skills is considered to ensure that funding is effectively targeted and delivered efficiently. The recommendations to Council, which I must propose, Mr Mayor, is to 1. Approve the UK Share Prosperity Fund delivery framework for South Ribble in order to progress delivery of the fund and begin commissioning the programmes within it. 2. To accept 3.367878 million of the UK SPF from the UK Government. And finally, to delegate authority to the Section 151 officer in consultation with myself to take the necessary decisions and actions required to accept the allocation of the funds, as well as implement and administer the scheme, and with the relevant cabinet members on all the related plans in accordance with the requirements and priorities of the UK SPF prospectus and fund. And of course, Mayor, these will be reported on to Cabinet and Council. I commend the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it seconded? Oops, thank you. Right, okay. So we move on to debate. Are there any questions from members of the council? Are there any questions from the public? Then we move straight on to the vote then. Thank you very much. Please push your buttons now for, abstain or against. Clearly carried, thank you. Okay, we move on to item 16, questions to the Leader of the Council. A question has been received and enclosed. It is by Councillor Paul Wharton-Hardman. Paul, could you please give a flavour for those watching on YouTube?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't propose to read the question in full detail. However, it's concerning the closure, the proposed closure of train station ticket offices. Myself and many of my colleagues in the Labour group, and I know in other groups, Councillor Howarth, has stood up against these proposed closures and the impact this could have on our communities, particularly the vulnerable, the elderly, the disabled, and the disproportionate effect it will have on them. The question is to the Leader, asking him to write to both the Secretary of State, the Government Railways Ministers and Northern Rail. In addition, you will have seen Labour councillors out and about with our orange ticket at various train stations, and we applaud anyone who wishes to join us to support their communities. And also on your tables, there is a barcode which will take you to a link to the consultation for the Northern Rail in particular and the Transpennine Express. So you can sign the petition. It's not a Labour petition, it's an RMT petition, and then link in directly to the Northern Rail and Transpennine consultation. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Leader, would you like to answer, please?
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks, Councillor Wharton-Hardman, for the advance notification of the question. Those that know me know I'm not often stuck for words, but when I heard this a couple of weeks ago, I was completely gobsmacked and stuck for words. There's a few words I've noted down regarding this. It's reckless, it's vindictive, it's dangerous, and I am convinced, colleagues, it would never pass any judicial review. that I understand the Mayor of Manchester and Liverpool are looking to challenge legally now. Every single time I go to Leyland Station, Preston Station, there are queues and queues and queues of people at the ticket office seeking the support of the staff. How on earth anybody with the same mind could think shutting down those ticket office is the correct decision? And I think they've given a 21-day consultation to look at it, is beyond me. It is beyond me. And you go, how many times have you been on Leyland Station? How many times have you been on Leyland Station when the machines don't work on the platforms? When the actual sign at the top telling you where the train's going doesn't work? When it says cancelled and you don't know when your next train is? The guy, particularly the guy that I normally see, and is there, is helpful. He tells you, he advises you on the best value for your ticket. He explains alternative routes when there's cancellations. And the government want to shut that down. We were speaking to the Northern Mail guy at Buckshaw Parkway this afternoon, and they haven't got a clue what's been going on. Nobody has spoken to them. And I am convinced, Mayor, I'm convinced this is retaliation by the government because the RMT and ASLEF are daring to take strike action for better paying conditions for their workers. So what they're going to do, the vindictive act to shut down all the ticket offices and put all those people out of work without discussing the hugely disproportionate impact it'll have on our computers, on our communities and community. I will with pleasure write on behalf of the council expressing our concern. I know Councillor Peter Molyneux mentioned the Deputy Speaker, Nigel Evans, earlier, who has also sent an email out saying he's gobsmacked at the decision the government is looking to make. Interestingly, I haven't heard anything from Catherine Fletcher about it, so I'll write to her as well. Thank you.
Thank you for the reply. Right, Councillor David Howarth has a question.
Well, it's on the same subject and it's on the question that you've just been asked. You did answer that you're going to write to the various ministers to express concern. The question you were asked was, would you write to those ministers to voice the council's opposition? The council as yet does not have any opposition because the council hasn't debated the subject. So you're not in a position to write and voice opposition because you don't have a mandate to do so. More than happy for you to write and express concern, but if your answer is that you are prepared to do what you're being asked to do, then you're not in a position to do it because you don't have a mandate from this council.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Foster.
I would respectfully disagree with Councillor Howarth. I do have a mandate. I have a majority on this council and I've been appointed leader of this council. I will write to council, to the government as the leader of the council, expressing my utter dismay at the decision that they're looking to make. And I will explain as leader of the council, I am wholeheartedly against it.
Thank you. One last question on the same subject from Councillor Howarth.
Thank you. I do have a supplementary. So are you saying then, Councillor Foster, that you don't respect the makeup of this council, that the council is its elected members and it's the elected members that determine a decision one way or the other? Just because you have a majority does not give you a mandate to do whatever you want without a debate and a vote within this council chamber. And I think you're strictly out of order.
Councillor Foster.
That I said I was against it, so perhaps Councillor Howard could listen to the answer. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for the leader? Nope. Are there any questions from the public? We have Derek. I think you've got about a minute and a half left, Derek, but there you go.
I'm sure I can manage that, Mr. Mayor. Under the last administration, there was a welcome revival of our relationship with Schleswig-Flensburg. And when our mayoral party returned, there was talk of a committee to be formed to promote further contacts between the UK and Germany. Would the new administration be prepared to confirm its commitment to twinning and how it proposes to further the cause of our relationship with our fellow Europeans? sadly only in the cultural and geographical sense.
So Foster.
Derek, we absolutely are committed to continuing the relationship, and just to update council, we have been in touch with our colleagues and friends in the last few weeks. That with one of the issues that we've faced is the Kreis president over in Germany wasn't very well, and so there was a exchange that was being planned that then couldn't take place. But additionally, they had elections as well in Germany at the same time as us, local elections, and actually they've had a change of administration as well over there. So what we're looking to do is have a meeting with them face to face, probably a Zoom meeting with them early September. It's our 50th anniversary next year, Mayor, and I think it's wholly appropriate that our friends are invited over, and we do have a big event with them next summer. But I will keep you updated, Derek, with everything that's happening.
Thank you for that. So we move on to number 17, questions to Cabinet members. I'll take these in order. So questions for the Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Property Assets, Commercial Services and Major Developments Council, Aniela Belinsky-Gelder. Councillor Karen Wharton.
Wharton, thank you.
Oh,
Absolutely.
sorry, I do apologise.
I think so.
It's all right. I'll chastise myself later. Thank you.
Thank you. So, I've received numerous complaints from residents and businesses concerning the new regulations and parking ticket machine on the car park and Tidygate Lost-to-Call. I've met with officers and owners of the businesses along Hope Terrace and Leyland Road concerning the changes made to the car park regulations and charges, and the negative impact these charges and the availability of only one ticket machine, which many residents are finding it very difficult to use, enough for them to express that they could be out of business in the next 12 months if nothing is changed, if the regulations aren't changed and amended due to customers going to other areas without parking restrictions or charges. Would the Cabinet member agree with me that in this uncertain economic climate, the council should be seen to be listening to small businesses, encouraging them, not inhibiting their ability to trade due to parking restrictions and regulations imposed on their local car park? Residents are now parking along Croston Road and other narrow local roads, causing major problems for local residents, where off-street parking is already a problem. And I request a meeting with the Cabinet member to discuss the serious problem within the community. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
just go.
Thank you, and thank you for your question. I would like to say while I'm stood here that I've had lots and lots of incoming about car parking. So it's probably worth me saying now that we did actually do a car parking review. Councillor Sue Jones did that in 2020. It was agreed at Cabinet and full council, and there was and it's supported by a lot of consultation. I've actually got the consultation here, and 12 people responded on about Hope Terrace. As you'd imagine, they all contradict each other, and I think that's part of the problem with the parking, is that everybody wants something different. And what we've tried, and there's 50 car parks as well, so it isn't a blanket policy for all of them. They're all treated differently with the issues that respect each area and things like that. And it said, and there's actually a point in the report which says Hope Terrace, a total of 12 responses were received, 6 of which supported the first hour free. 3 felt the car park should be free, and 1 felt charges should be increased. So there you go, there's a contradiction even in that. So what we've done is we've only just very recently implemented the policy, because like you say, the ticket machines have only just arrived, but the policies existed since 2020. So what I think I've decided to do as the executive member is allow the policy 6 months to allow people to adopt the changes, become familiar with the machines and things like that, based on all the consultation we've received. I am happy to continue to take people's opinions and responses on that. And then in 6 months, once we've allowed the changes to embed, then we'll look at it again. But I'm more than happy to meet with you at any point to discuss car parking. But as you can imagine, it's a very difficult balancing act in terms of businesses, residents and people getting everything they need out of the parking. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the reply. I don't have any other questions from the council. Are there any questions from members of the public? No, I'm going to move on. Questions for the Cabinet Member for Finance and Public Protection, Councillor Matthew Tomlinson. I've got a question from Council Damien Bretherton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a bit loud. Sorry, can you hear me? There's been some confusion about the council's long-term debt position, and so therefore I'd like to ask a question about that. So I referred to the South Ribble Borough Council Treasury Management Strategy statement dated 2023-4 to 2025-6. And the chart under the heading Liability Benchmark 0.78. Under the Prudential Code, authorities must show a long-term projection of external debt. The chart indicates an external debt level of £40 million in 2024, which gradually tapers away to a level of about £10 million by 2062. Please can the Cabinet Member explain the meaning of the £40 million debt and what the £40 million will be spent on? Thank you.
Councillor Tomlinson.
I think it's really important at this juncture, Mr. Mayor, to differentiate between a council being in debt and a council investing in its communities. If you used the criteria that seems to be suggested by Councillor Bretherton and applied it to every house in Britain, no one would ever take a mortgage out. No one would borrow money to put a roof over their heads, and no business would ever take out borrowing to invest in new plant and machinery. We've got a well laid out plan, which we'll be discussing later, for next door, a huge investment in our borough to provide over 75 apartments, quality apartments for older people that will reduce the cost on the NHS and will over time pay for itself and leave us with an asset that we own. Now, I think that is a good use of our money. I think that that is a way to plan for the future and a way to invest in our communities, actually in the way that our communities have told us they want us to invest. When we held the open day here to talk about next door, most of the people who came through the doors wanted to put their name down for an apartment. They didn't want to come and talk about our prudential borrowing rates. They didn't want to come and talk about how long this will taper off and how long it'll take us to pay back. They recognised what a great investment in our borough this is. I'm committed to supporting this. I think it's financially prudent to do this because it does pay for itself and it saves the local community, whether it's the NHS or the county council, it saves them money too in the long run. It would have been nice if they contributed to this. Of course it would. But we asked the question of the county council. The Cabinet Member wasn't interested in supporting this, even though it saves them money. And sadly, we weren't able to get money from the local NHS either. We have got significant grant funding from Homes England, over £8 million of money coming into the borough from Homes England. And I refer back to my earlier comments. This is an investment in our borough to improve the place that we represent. And I'm happy to stand by that record. Councillor Bretherton clearly has a different idea. We shouldn't borrow money. We shouldn't invest. We shouldn't put a roof over the head of our older residents. I disagree.
Yeah. Councillor Damien Rutherton, on the same subject, please.
Thank you for that response. I have no objection to borrowing. Personally, I do borrow to invest. So the question wasn't about what we were going to invest the money in. The question was, is that a debt, a long-term debt? There was some confusion, especially during the election period, when remarks were made about the council not having any long-term debt. So the question was, that chart that I referred to, is that an accurate reflection? Will the council have long-term debt of £40 million? I didn't say I was against spending the money. All I'm asking is, will the council have £40 million of debt in 2024? Thank you.
Councillor Tomlinson.
I think if we treated this as a business and had a balance sheet, we would have an investment there that equaled the money that we borrowed. So we would have an investment to balance that out. That's how businesses work. That is how businesses work. Now, you can argue the toss all you like. I will argue we have an investment there that will pay its own way, and that actually comes onto our balance sheet as a new asset to balance up the money that we borrowed. I don't see that as us actually being in debt, because we have an investment that balances out the money that we borrowed. So my answer is no.
Okay. Sorry, you've had your two questions. Are there any further questions from the councillors? Right, Councillor. No, I'm lucky I look round. Caleb Tomlinson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Does the portfolio holder agree with the famous American poet Robert Frost that half the world is composed of people who have something to say and can't, and the other half of the world is full of people who have nothing to say but keep on saying it anyway? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Tonight, Councillor.
Mathematics, I would say, and the third half of people. I can't say. I'm not going to try.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions from councillors? Your microphone's still on. Thank you. In which case, do we have any questions from the public? No, in which case I'm going to move on. Questions for Cabinet Member, Neighbourhood and Waste Services, Councillor Deborah Ashton. I've got a question from Councillor David Howarth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We currently provide, or residents have a choice of a large bin or a small bin, if it happens to be your blue bin for recyclables or your black bin for your general waste. But what we don't have at the moment is the choice of brown bins, of a large bin or a smaller bin. Now, there are still people within our borough who might not have the capability of pushing a full large brown bin from the garden out to the front, but they may well have the ability to push a smaller one. I've queried this with our officers, only to be told that there is an assisted scheme available, but a lot of people who are still capable of gardening and filling the smaller bin don't want to be assisted, because they won't be able to get the bin out to be assisted in the first place, but they would like a smaller bin to enable them to keep on gardening, fill that and get it out to the front of the property. So my question is, would you please perhaps go away and investigate the feasibility of enabling residents to have a smaller brown bin should they choose, because I am assured that they are available and they are compatible with our bin collection wagons, and there are people out there who would like that facility if it's available. Thank you.
Councillor.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Howarth. As I said, just at the end of my previous two items, the next thing on my agenda is around waste. And one of the things that I know we are looking at is the provision of bins. Another significant amount of feedback we got on the doorstep was about the size of the green boxes, for example, for collecting cardboard. So there is going to be a review of the receptacles, if I can put it that way, which will look across the whole piece. So I will make sure that that is taken into account as part of the review.
Thank you. Councillor Karen Walton has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The installation of 19 electric vehicle charging points in the borough is to be commended. But could the Cabinet member confirm that the charging points installed on the Hope Terrace car park in Gloucester Call are in use, as I've been informed that the electricity supply to these charging points is insufficient to power the charging points that have already been installed? So please could you confirm if this is true or not?
Councillor.
There are issues in terms of the there are often delays in terms of fully commissioning the electric vehicle charging points precisely because of the issue of connecting to the network. But I think the question you're raising is a slightly different question to which I don't know the answer. So I will seek advice from officers and reply in writing.
Yeah, thank you. I have no one else on council wishing to ask a question. Anyone from the public? Nope, thank you. Then we'll move on. Questions for the Cabinet member, Customs Services and Digital, Councillor Ian Watkinson. Do we have any questions from members of the council? Nope. Members of the public? Nope. I will move on. Questions for the Cabinet member, Planning, Business Support and Economic Development, Councillor James Flannery. We've got several questions. Councillor Angela Turner, or is it Angie? Well, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'd like to ask the Cabinet member for an update on the Penwitham Master Plan. You last provided an update at the council meeting on the 1st of March, stating that you'll provide a report in the first quarter of this year, April to June 2023. So if you could give us an update of what progress is made since the completion of REVA 2, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Go ahead, Councillor Flannery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. The officers are working hard in terms of the development of the Penwitham Master Plan. They've not stopped really, but as all councillors can appreciate, particularly Councillor Brennan there, the inflationary costs, interest rates and everything else to do with materials, labour and the sector which we are currently fully exposed to is caused a slight delay. But the brief for the stages are IPA stage 1 up to stage 4, which is the concept design, spatial coordination and technical design is currently being drafted. That'll be out in the next month or two. And it looks like we'll be starting work, spade in the ground, early next year rather than late this year.
Thank you. Okay, smashing. Councillor Caleb Tomlinson.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Following the Secretary of State's decision to put back any announcement on the Pickering's Farm application till September, we were due it in May, if you recollect, but it's now been put back to September. And this is an application that's been unanimously turned down by this planning committee at this council, not once but twice. It's been to a judicial review that agreed with this council's planning committee's decision to turn down the applications. Would he agree with me that this decision is baffling and dubious? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tomlinson. As always, eloquent, to the point, and a really, really good question. South Ribble has done its bit. We rejected this application twice. The appeal went to the Secretary of State, and as the council has just said, we were due an answer on this. Certainly before now. We were all disappointed. I think everyone will be disappointed to hear that this week we got a letter from the Department of whatever it's called these days, to keep changing that one, to say that will now be deferred again till September the 18th or before. So, yeah, I completely agree that it's disappointing, but rest assured, you can hold your head up high as the chair of the planning committee and all the members on the planning committee, because you have done your bit for the residents.
Thank you for that, Councillor Flannery. Councillor Keith Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, Mayor. Rhymes, isn't it? I'd like to ask the Cabinet member about licensing at the moment. During Longton Live, we did have a few minor issues, and the licensing team was spot on with their responses and their actions with that to safeguard the health and safety of the members of the public who are enjoying the event. Soon after that, they went on to Operation Vertebrae, which is a multi-agency scheme to try and alleviate us of rogue traders, lorry drivers, and other such people. I just wondered if the Cabinet member would be able to share any information we get from that. We're particularly interested in scrap dealers at the moment, because as present, according to the government website, we don't have any licensed scrap dealers in the borough, or collectors or transporters, which is a worry, because very often we see adverts for these people coming round very early to pick up. Well, they come round and extract scrap from where they can find it. So I just wondered if the Cabinet member could update us when that information is made available to all councillors, so we know sort of what we're dealing with. Thank you.
Well, I wasn't expecting that, as you see. Well, thanks for your question, Councillor. I do think this is not my portfolio. I think this is Councillor Tomlinson's portfolio. So if you don't mind, can I bring him in, or?
I would say it should go to a written question.
Yeah,
because we've already moved on that.
And but before I finish, yes, Longton Live, Penwitham Live, Leyland Festival, all great things which are going on in the borough. So well done.
Thank you for that. I take it there's no questions from the public. That's smashing. Question for Cabinet member, Wealth Building, Social Justice, Equality. No, she hasn't. Sorry, I haven't got to the name yet. So any questions, please put in writing for Councillor Alty. Questions for Cabinet member of Communities, Leisure, Wealth Building, Councillor Claire Hunter. Do we have any questions from council? Fantastic. And questions from the public? Smashing. We move on that and we go to item 18, exclusion of press and public. This item is for decision. Can I please ask the leader of the council, Councillor Foster, to propose that the press and public be excluded from the meeting? Okay, is it seconded? I'm going straight to the vote. Once we're there, can we for, abstain or against? Thank you. We will be told when we can resume the meeting. The doors should be locked